Let's rank the top 24 quarterbacks in Dynasty. And for me, in tier one, it's five guys. I know this is controversial, but when I think of this tier, it's the 101 plus equivalent for this year's rookie draft. I've got Josh Allen, who I think is a clear number one. Then you got Mahomes, Hurts, CJ Stroud, Lamar Jackson. All five of these guys I would take over the 101, and you would have to give me something on top, something notable. We know what they're capable of. If you want to dwell on the production, of course, what they've shown us, but then you project out, you just think of the perception, the perspective around these guys. It's a clear, easy tier one for me. I can understand, well, why CJ Stroud? Why Lamar Jackson here? When I just think about how I assort the quarterback position, it's Caleb Williams, it's before Caleb Williams, it's receivers in particular in startup drafts. Who are you picking before receivers, right? And these are the guys that meet those criteria for me. Let me know what you guys think of this tier one in the comments. For my tier two, we open up quite a bit. And so we go from some of the top end QB1s that you are just set it and forget it, you feel really good about. You still feel very nice about this tier two. And for me, this tier two is defined by effectively the 101 to the 103 type equivalency, with Caleb Williams kicking it off. Hot take. Okay. Well, look, for me, it's him ahead of Burrow, him ahead of Justin Herbert. He's got the tiebreakers of health and situation. Going to Chicago, that's signed, sealed, delivered to me. He's got a DJ Moore, a Keenan Allen there, right? He's got a DeAndre Swift. He's got a Cole Kmet, Gerald Everett. He's got a decent offensive line as well. Just being tiebreakers over these next two guys, which look, with Burrow, with Herbert, they're both awesome options. Easy top 10 quarterbacks. We just haven't quite seen the level of consistent top 5 quarterback play, for my money, to warrant them being quite ahead of Caleb Williams, at least, and then into that type of 101 plus tier one for me. Drake May. I know this is a bit of a hot take. With Drake May, I love the player, and I'm projecting, right? And of course, well, we don't have any production to go off of for these rookies in terms of the NFL. And I know people want to say, well, look at the college. College, that is the most nonsensical basis for me to be like, oh, well, let's stat count. Let's look at wins in college and then just blanketly try to ascribe, well, that's what this means for their NFL future. That's just ridiculous to me. With Drake May, I'm projecting out there, obviously, with all these draft eligible players, it's inherently projection, right? So Drake May here, one of my top 8 quarterbacks. I guess top 9, technically. Top 10, rounding out, it's Anthony Richardson for me. Anthony Richardson is a bit of the tiebreaker for me between a Drake May and a Jaden Daniels. So with Jaden Daniels, I just have him slightly behind in this sense because for me, I love the Colts situation for Anthony Richardson. I know he got the injury, but I think a long term, cross our fingers, I don't see him being this type of injury prone player. I see his game breaking upside, the size, the athleticism, but really, again, harping on that marriage with Shane Steichen. And you've got the ground game with a JT to support you. You've got a Michael Pittman. You've got some decent offensive line pieces as well. I really just can't leave out AR in my top 10. But then Jaden Daniels, you've got him knocking on the door, right? He's going to be a top 3 pick in the NFL draft. I think 2 or 3, it's really locked. He is the favorite for number 2, which I understand. I can understand it. For me, I still have Drake May ahead of him. I know, well, the game-breaking rushing upside. I love that, okay? I'm not discounting that. I think Drake May, people are a little bit asleep at the wheel with the type of dual threat he can provide. Not to the level of, 1,000-yard rushing upside like maybe a Jaden Daniels, but also as a passer. And just to be able to get you, potentially 2-3 points in terms of rushing yards, but then be able to be a threat in the red zone running a la a Josh Allen type. So that's a bit of my thinking, my thought process. We get out of the top 3 in this class over to Jordan Love. Jordan Love and Kyler Murray rounding out this. Still feeling really good about these type of QB1s for your dynasty team. Okay? Jordan Love played as well as anybody, really, the last handful of games in the regular season and then showed some things in the playoffs too. And he's got an awesome situation himself there in Green Bay. And he doesn't have these type of necessarily high-end receiving weapons that you maybe think of in a traditional sense. Although now they've got Josh Jacobs. That's nice. In theory, you think of at least on the same tier, if anything, a plane above an Aaron Jones type. But you've got these death by 1,000 paper cuts, the amount of guys that the Packers have for him to throw to. These younger type receivers. And so I think of it as just an ascending offense, ascending quarterback for sure. And so I got to include him in this tier for me. And then Kyler Murray, look, it's that dynamism for fantasy, that upside. You know the Cardinals with 2 first-round picks, they're going to address receiver. And we've seen what Kyler Murray is capable of. I think he's one of the most disrespected players in the NFL. And I think big things are ahead of him for 2024. In tier 3, we're talking about 4 guys who, look, they're effectively not worth the 103 in my book, but they are in and around the 104 to 106. These are still guys that are fringe type of QB1s, maybe firm QB1s, if depending on how you want to look at it, right? Good options that I just don't see having such the level of upside as the guys before them, okay? Still nice options with Trevor Lawrence, right? He had the QB8 season a couple years ago, but I just don't see that type of consistency from him, especially you lose a Calvin Ridley. I know they've kind of re-signed a few of their offensive linemen, but contracts can, in some degree at this time of year, can maybe mask, well, how good is the actual player, right? It's a lot of money, but does it really match up? And in some sense, I don't know how convinced I am that just because they gave, decent chunks of money to this offensive line, that it's going to be just so different of a story. You have, now a Gabe Davis coming in there. And maybe they address receiver at 17. And if they do, that maybe can change things, right? It gives you a lot more confidence, at least, with Trevor Lawrence in his future, giving him more weapons, setting him up for some success. But you look at how their run game struggled a lot last season. Doug Peterson, he's saying he's trying to make a big point to improve that. I just don't know how convinced I am that things are so well there down in Jacksonville. With Brock Purdy, though, we know how things are in San Fran, in the Bay Area, and look, top 10 type producer, right? I don't know how many seasons, how well the 49ers are going to continue to sustain some insane efficiency, right? With guys like Ayuk. Obviously, you got CMC, who's a monster. But speaking of Ayuk, where exactly is he? How does that offense potentially change? And I think, look, in some ways, it's got to be the perception around Brock Purdy, right? Mr. Irrelevant. And I think until he gets a significant type of investment to a second degree in terms of a contract extension, I think that drives part of the wariness right now. He's not a rushing threat, right? But he is in a very good situation. So, as is effectively the last 2 guys in this tier with Tua and with Dak. So I think this is a pretty fair evaluation in this tier for me. You look at Tua, it's his contract. Speaking of contracts, it's really his contract year. A lot to prove. Or not. Let me know if you guys think that contract extension talks are seemingly already being drummed up, by the GM at this time of year, which I don't know. It's interesting. I don't know if I would, in their shoes, just shell out this insane contract just right now before the season starts, but nonetheless, assuming he does, well, if he does get that only further insulates to his value. With Dak, though, it's looking like there's not going to be any contract extension or agreement reached, really, in this offseason, and so I'm thinking, man, if he leaves Dallas, that's about as good a situation as you could possibly have. I don't like that uncertainty, that ambiguity at all, with a clear non-commitment at this point in time. So, still going to be a top 10 level, a QB1 type producer. In a dynasty sense, though, how far can we really project beyond next season with Dak Prescott? Let me know if you guys disagree or agree with this type of sentiment in the comments. But we move on to tier 4. With tier 4, you're talking about a little bit larger tier here. You're talking about guys that are effectively, for me, valued in that 107 to 110 type. And so you're talking about generally younger guys that are right in around 30 or below for me. JJ McCarthy, look, if he gets top 5 draft capital, he's got to shoot up arguably right in that tier 3 for me. You got to respect it, okay? Speaking of the case I made with these rookies, there's no sense in overly dwelling on in the negative sense for what these guys might have done in their draft eligible year in college, right? And it's going to be a totally different situation. So you got to project and you got to be inherently glass half full with these quarterbacks, right? At least that's how I will operate. But particularly, with a Bryce Young situation vastly improved. The coaching, the potential weaponry. Already you've got a Deontay Johnson, who's not in the absolute twilight of his career. No disrespect to Adam Thielen, but it's already looking a lot better for a Bryce Young as it is in this offseason for Will Levis, okay? You can maybe get hung up on how I position him within this tier, but look, this is my preference, okay? And I got Will Levis here because they are giving him the chance to be the guy, at least obviously for 2024, but to really show something. And I'm not going to bet totally against Will Levis, okay? They've upgraded on the offensive line with Lloyd Cushenberry. They bring in a Calvin Ridley. They're going to draft, in all likelihood, a top franchise level tackle, a Joe Alt, maybe a Fuaga or Fuonga. There's pronunciations. Will Levis is positioned to succeed. So why just be overly on the opposite end and just say he's going to fail? For me, it's that fear of failure mindset that I just can't subscribe to. Okay? We're in the off season, right? Football last year 2023 doesn't carry over. It's a blank slate. It's a new day. Will Levis, a lot improved for him and his potential success. So I'm not saying you got to just expect he's going to be a QB1 in fantasy, top 12. I'm not saying that at all. But he doesn't have to move the sun and the moon to then earn future insulation, to then get a starting spot in 2025 and beyond. So with Jared Goff and with Baker Mayfield, though, guys that, look, they're very nice quarterback twos, I think, to have for your dynasty team, right? We know what they are. Right around that 30 range in terms of age, but statues at the position, but really good passers from what they've shown in terms of fantasy type production. Both top 10, both quarterback one types this past season. And so I don't think that wheel is going to totally change, right? You see Baker, he's got now the contract. Mike Evans returns, which it wasn't looking so great. If you look at maybe this time, or not this time, look at preseason in 2023. Looked like it was going to be totally different, right? People assumed they would almost be a Caleb Williams player. But to Baker's credit, to the entire team's credit, huge season for them, beaten by Eagles, falling to Jared Goff in then the divisional round. And with Jared Goff, look, we know the weaponry, right? We know what he is, okay? And so I positioned him in this tier. It's very fair for me. I just am going to take the swing. I prefer the upside shots, okay? I'm not risk averse, if anything should be clear in this video. At tier 5, this is a little bit of a not too jumbled tier, but I think 2 and 2 as a way to group this. Rounding out the top 24, we're talking basically 111, 112 type valuations for me. It's Kirk Cousins and Matt Stafford, right? Guys that are right around, talk about the 30 threshold for Goff and Mayfield. We're talking an additional 5 years. We're talking almost 2 type of entire dynasty cycles, dynasty windows, right? But with Cousins, with Stafford, they're also in that bucket, potentially being top 12 type of quarterbacks. And they have incredible situations, incredible weapons available to them. And look at the contracts, there really aren't outs in 2024, not till 2025. So you think, man, okay, if I can get this year and then possibly, how things are looking at 2025 and another year. So I got to recognize these guys rounding out the top 24. Absolutely nice quarterback twos to have. Just a little bit too old, I think, to position them much higher. Gotta address Bo Nix and Michael Penix. With these two guys, one of them I know is going to be a first-round pick. I'm convicted in that. I don't know which one, I should be clear. One of them, there will be 5 quarterbacks drafted in round 1. That I am confident of. Okay, bookmark this. We'll check back. I just see the top 10, top 8, even we'll say the top quarter of the draft, 4 go. You're saying for the next 75% of the first round, the next 20 plus 25 maybe even picks, you're saying one of them can't be a quarterback? And with Knicks and Penix, a team that is picking in the middle to late first round, or a team that maybe like the Broncos that maybe misses out with their first pick around in the top half of the draft, one of them doesn't try to trade up. No way to me. No way. One of them gets picked in the first. And so you're saying one of them jumps at least up into tier 4. And then one of them kind of stays right here because I think that QB6, so to speak, could very well have the Will Levis type draft capital and then a path to starting relatively early on next season. And so, guys, these are my quarterback rankings. Let me know what you think of them, what I got totally wrong, what I got maybe spot on in your view. But have a great weekend, guys. Comment what type of videos you might want to see in the future, and check me out on TikTok. We're making shorts over there, and I will see you guys in the next video.